The champagne glass shattered against Marcus Williams' Armani suit as $240 million evaporated into thin air. Casino heiress Victoria Rothschild stood frozen, her manicured hand still extended from the throw, watching crimson wine drip from the face of the man who had just become the most powerful tech mogul on the East Coast. The entire ballroom of Monaco's Grand Casino fell silent as Marcus slowly wiped the liquid from his eyes, his jaw tightening with a control that made everyone in the room step back instinctively. What Victoria didn't know in that moment was that the man she had just humiliated owned the patents to the AI technology her family's empire desperately needed to survive. And in exactly 48 hours, he would make them pay for every drop. 3 days earlier, Marcus Williams had been nothing more than a name on a contract to the Rothschild family, another tech entrepreneur desperate to break into their exclusive world of high-stakes gambling and luxury entertainment. Victoria had watched her older brother James pace their father's mahogany office, explaining how their casino chain needed to modernize or lose everything to younger, more technologically advanced competitors. The numbers were staggering. Their customer base had dropped 30% in 2 years as younger gamblers flocked to online platforms and virtual reality experiences. Marcus Williams owned Reality Sync, the only company with AI sophisticated enough to bridge the gap between digital and physical gambling, creating immersive experiences that would save their dying empire. Victoria had rolled her eyes during that meeting, painting her nails while James stressed about profit margins and market share. She had grown up believing the Rothschild name was untouchable, that their century-old casino dynasty would never bow to some upstart tech company run by someone she assumed was just another Silicon Valley opportunist trying to extract money from old money families. Her father had built this empire on exclusivity, on keeping certain people out while welcoming only those who understood the unspoken rules of their world. The idea that they needed help from anyone, especially someone from outside their circle, struck her as personally offensive. But Marcus Williams wasn't just anyone. Born in Detroit to a single mother who cleaned offices at night, he had coded his first program at 8 years old on a computer he built from scrap parts he found in dumpsters. By 16, he was hacking bank security systems not to steal money, but to expose their vulnerabilities, sending detailed reports to executives who initially ignored him until they realized a teenager was consistently outsmarting their million-dollar security teams. Harvard offered him a full scholarship, but he turned it down to start his company in a basement apartment, surviving on ramen noodles and 20-hour workdays while developing AI technology that would eventually revolutionize how humans interact with digital environments. The technology Marcus created didn't just simulate reality, it improved upon it, creating gambling experiences so immersive that players could feel the texture of cards in their hands while playing virtual poker, smell the leather of a casino chair while sitting in their living room, even experience the subtle psychological pressure of being watched by pit bosses who existed only as advanced algorithms designed to read micro-expressions and betting patterns. Major casino chains had been trying to acquire or license his technology for 3 years, but Marcus had been selective, waiting for the right partnership that would allow him to maintain control over his innovations while expanding into the luxury market where real money exchanged hands. The Rothschild deal was supposed to be different. James had approached Marcus personally, flying to San Francisco to pitch a partnership that would give Reality Sync access to their exclusive high-roller clientele while providing the Rothschild casinos with the technological edge they needed to survive. The numbers were astronomical, a $2.4 billion deal that would make Marcus one of the youngest billionaires in tech while saving the Rothschild empire from irrelevance. Both men had spent weeks negotiating terms, building a mutual respect, despite their vastly different backgrounds, and James had insisted on celebrating the preliminary agreement at Monaco, the crown jewel of the Rothschild casino collection. Victoria had arrived at the celebration dinner already annoyed. She had been forced to cut short her vacation in Ibiza, where she had been enjoying the attention of a Spanish count who had promising prospects and excellent cocaine connections. The idea of spending an evening making small talk with some tech nerd while her brother fawned over profit projections struck her as tedious beyond description. She had worn her most expensive dress, the one that had cost more than most people's cars, and expected the evening to revolve around her charm and beauty, as social gatherings always did. Marcus arrived precisely on time, which Victoria immediately interpreted as try-hard behavior. She noted his perfectly fitted suit, obviously expensive but not custom-made, and his confident posture that suggested he belonged in their world, despite clearly being new to it. When James introduced them, Marcus had extended his hand with a genuine smile and made direct eye contact that lasted exactly the right amount of time, neither too brief nor uncomfortably long. Victoria shook his hand with the limp grip she reserved for people she considered beneath her notice, and immediately dismissed him as another social climber trying to buy his way into legitimacy. Dinner proceeded smoothly until the conversation turned to the future of gambling technology. Marcus spoke passionately about creating experiences that would democratize high-end casino entertainment, making luxury gambling accessible to people who could never afford to fly to Monaco or afford the minimum bets at exclusive tables. His vision involved virtual reality lounges in middle-class neighborhoods, where working families could experience the thrill of Monte Carlo without the expense, where truck drivers and teachers could feel like high rollers for a fraction of the cost. Victoria's champagne glass had paused halfway to her lips. The idea that her family's carefully cultivated exclusivity could be packaged and sold to the masses struck her as fundamentally wrong, a violation of the natural order that kept certain experiences reserved for certain people. She interrupted Marcus mid-sentence to point out that the appeal of places like Monaco wasn't just the gambling, it was the exclusivity itself. The knowledge that most people could never access such luxury, making that experience available to everyone, would destroy what made it valuable in the first place. Marcus had nodded thoughtfully and replied that he understood her perspective, but believed luxury was wasted when it was hoarded rather than shared. That technology could eliminate artificial scarcity and allow more people to experience beauty and excitement previously reserved for the wealthy. He mentioned his mother, who had never seen the inside of a casino, but would love the elegance and sophistication of the Monte Carlo environment if she could access it without spending her life savings on travel and minimum bets. The reference to his mother had triggered something visceral in Victoria. The casual way he brought up his working-class background, the implicit suggestion that people like his mother deserved access to spaces like this, the complete lack of understanding that exclusivity wasn't just about money, but about maintaining proper social boundaries. All of it combined to create a fury she struggled to contain. She excused herself to the restroom, where she stared at her reflection and decided that Marcus Williams needed to be taught exactly where he belonged. Returning to the table, Victoria had smiled sweetly and asked Marcus about his background, phrasing her questions in ways that highlighted the gulf between his upbringing and the world he was trying to enter. She asked about his education, his family, his previous relationships, each question designed to expose his outsider status while maintaining plausible deniability about her intentions. Marcus answered honestly, seemingly unaware of the trap being set, speaking about his childhood in Detroit with neither shame nor defensive pride, simply as facts that had shaped his perspective. The conversation continued through dessert as Victoria's questions became more pointed. She asked about his first time in a casino, smiling when he admitted it had been a tribal gambling establishment in Connecticut rather than a glamorous destination. She inquired about his hobbies, raising an eyebrow when he mentioned building computers rather than sailing or polo. She wondered aloud about his art collection, nodding sympathetically when he confessed to preferring technology museums over classical galleries. Each answer reinforced her conviction that he didn't belong in their world despite his financial success. James seemed oblivious to his sister's agenda, focused on finalizing deal points and discussing implementation timelines. He spoke excitedly about the potential for their partnership to reshape the entire gambling industry, imagining virtual reality experiences so sophisticated that the distinction between physical and digital gambling would become meaningless. Marcus matched his enthusiasm, describing technical capabilities that would allow remote players to interact with live dealers in real casino environments, creating hybrid experiences that combine the convenience of online gambling with the social energy of physical casinos. As dinner wound down, James suggested they move to the casino floor to show Marcus the facility that would serve as the flagship location for their new technology. Victoria reluctantly joined them, irritated that her attempts to diminish Marcus had failed to achieve their intended effect. If anything, her brother seemed more impressed with Marcus's authenticity and background, treating his outsider status as an advantage rather than a disqualification. The three of them walked through the opulent gaming rooms while James pointed out architectural details and explained the psychology behind the casino's design. Marcus asked thoughtful questions about traffic patterns, customer behavior, and operational efficiency, approaching the space from an analytical perspective that impressed the staff members they encountered. He noticed details that veteran casino executives often missed, commenting on sightlines that could be optimized for surveillance, lighting conditions that affected player comfort, and acoustic elements that influenced betting behavior. His observations demonstrated a deep understanding of human psychology combined with technical expertise that could genuinely revolutionize their industry. Victoria watched this exchange with growing resentment. The staff members were treating Marcus with the same deference they showed to established industry leaders, recognizing expertise when they encountered it regardless of its source. The casino manager actually asked for Marcus's business card, expressing interest in consulting opportunities beyond the primary partnership. Even the dealers seemed engaged by his questions, appreciating his genuine curiosity about their work rather than the usual dismissive attitudes they encountered from wealthy visitors. The final straw came when they reached the high roller room, the most exclusive section of the casino, where minimum bets started at $10,000, and players were served by dedicated hosts who catered to their every need. James explained the psychological principles behind the room's design, how every element from the chair height to the carpet color was calculated to encourage larger bets and longer playing sessions. Marcus nodded appreciatively and mentioned that his technology could enhance these psychological triggers by creating personalized environments that adapted to individual player preferences in real time. A distinguished older gentleman at the baccarat table recognized James and approached to congratulate him on the upcoming partnership. He had read about the deal in the Financial Times and expressed admiration for the Rothschild family's forward-thinking approach to industry evolution. When James introduced Marcus, the gentleman shook his hand warmly and commented that innovation often came from unexpected sources, that the most successful businesses learn to recognize talent regardless of its origins. Victoria watched this interaction with barely controlled rage. The The casual acceptance of Marcus by people whose approval she valued, the easy way he fit into conversations about topics she considered exclusive to her social circle, the complete absence of the deference she expected from someone of his background, all of it violated her fundamental assumptions about how the world should work. She excused herself to the bar, ostensibly to order another drink, but actually to compose herself before doing something she might regret. At the bar, Victoria encountered Elena Vasquez, a gossip columnist for European luxury magazines who specialized in tracking the social movements of wealthy families. Elena immediately recognized the brewing tension and positioned herself to observe whatever drama might unfold, sensing an opportunity for the kind of story her readers craved. She ordered a bottle of the casino's most expensive wine, a gesture designed to appear generous, while positioning herself as a neutral party who could observe events without appearing to take sides. Victoria accepted a glass of the wine, while venting her frustrations about nouveau riche entrepreneurs who thought money could buy them entry into established social circles. Elena listened sympathetically while mentally composing the article she would write about whatever happened next. Knowing that stories about social conflicts between old money and new money always generated significant reader interest, she encouraged Victoria's rant by asking leading questions about the importance of maintaining standards and preserving the integrity of exclusive institutions. Meanwhile, Marcus and James continued their tour of the casino, unaware of the storm brewing at the bar. They discussed technical specifications for the virtual reality interfaces that would be installed throughout the property, debating optimal placement strategies and user experience considerations. Marcus suggested several modifications to the planned installation that would improve efficiency while reducing costs. Recommendations that impressed James with their practical sophistication and attention to operational details. The conversation eventually turned to personal topics as they developed genuine rapport beyond their business relationship. James shared his concerns about preserving his family's legacy while adapting to modern market realities, expressing appreciation for Marcus's understanding of the challenges facing traditional industries in an era of rapid technological change. Marcus reciprocated by discussing the pressure he felt to prove that his success wasn't just luck or market timing, that his technology represented genuine innovation rather than clever marketing of existing concepts. This mutual vulnerability created a foundation of trust that extended beyond their professional partnership. James found himself genuinely liking Marcus as a person rather than simply respecting him as a business partner, appreciating his combination of technical brilliance and emotional intelligence. Marcus similarly warmed to James, recognizing in him someone who understood the weight of family expectations and the challenge of honoring tradition while embracing necessary change. Their developing friendship made Victoria's hostility even more pronounced when they returned to collect her from the bar. She had consumed most of Elena's expensive wine while working herself into a state of righteous indignation about the degradation of social standards and the importance of maintaining proper boundaries between different classes of people. Elena had encouraged this spiral by sharing stories about other established families who had been forced to associate with questionable business partners, framing these collaborations as necessary compromises rather than positive developments. When James suggested they continue the celebration at a nearby nightclub known for attracting European royalty and international celebrities, Victoria saw an opportunity to expose Marcus's inadequacy in a more casual social environment. She agreed enthusiastically, imagining scenarios where his outsider status would become obvious to everyone present, where his lack of familiarity with their social rituals would embarrass him and, by extension, her brother. Elena declined to join them, but promised to catch up later, already planning how to position herself to observe the aftermath of whatever confrontation was brewing. The nightclub, Lumière, occupied the top floor of a historic building overlooking the Mediterranean, its terraces providing breathtaking views, while its interior design created intimate spaces where Europe's elite gathered to see and be seen. The venue's exclusivity wasn't just about wealth, but about social connections, requiring either membership or personal invitation from existing patrons. James's status as a Rothschild guaranteed immediate access, while Marcus's presence as his guest was accepted without question by security staff trained to recognize legitimate business partnerships. Victoria immediately positioned herself to monitor Marcus's behavior in this environment, watching for signs of discomfort or unfamiliarity that she could exploit. She expected him to be overwhelmed by the casual presence of minor royalty, intimidated by conversations conducted in multiple languages, or confused by social protocols that weren't explicitly stated but were understood by anyone who belonged. Instead, Marcus appeared perfectly comfortable, engaging in natural conversations while maintaining the confident composure that had impressed her brother throughout the evening. The revelation that Marcus spoke fluent French, acquired during a graduate program at the Sorbonne, where he had studied the psychological foundations of decision-making, eliminated one of Victoria's anticipated advantages. His ability to discuss European art movements with a Swiss collector, based on museum visits during business trips rather than formal education, demonstrated cultural sophistication that undermined her assumptions about his background. Most frustratingly, his genuine interest in learning about topics outside his expertise made him popular with people who usually dismissed outsiders as social climbers seeking validation. As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself increasingly isolated by her own hostility. While Marcus and James continued bonding over shared interests and mutual respect, she sulked at the bar, ordering increasingly expensive drinks, while Elena texted updates to her editor about the developing story. The contrast between Marcus's natural social ease and Victoria's obvious resentment became apparent to other patrons, who began avoiding her while gravitating toward the more positive energy radiating from the business partners. The breaking point came when Prince Alessandro of Sardinia, a frequent visitor to Rothschild properties and someone Victoria had been pursuing romantically for months, approached their table to meet Marcus after hearing about the innovative technology partnership. Alessandro expressed genuine fascination with virtual reality applications in entertainment, revealing a technical background that surprised everyone present. He and Marcus immediately connected over shared interests in emerging technologies, discussing potential applications in cultural preservation and education with an enthusiasm that captured the attention of nearby tables. Victoria watched in horror as Alessandro, who had barely acknowledged her presence despite her obvious interest, invited Marcus to visit his private collection of historical computing devices during his next trip to Italy. The casual way Alessandro offered access to experiences Victoria had been hoping to share, the easy camaraderie between the men, the complete irrelevance of her presence in their conversation, all of it crystallized her resentment into focused rage. She excused herself to the restroom, where she stared at her reflection and made a decision that would destroy everything. Returning to the table, Victoria found Marcus alone, as James and Alessandro had stepped onto the terrace to discuss details of a potential collaboration between Reality Sync and the Prince's Cultural Foundation. She sat across from Marcus and began what appeared to be a friendly conversation, asking about his impressions of Monaco and his plans for implementing the casino technology. Marcus responded warmly, interpreting her sudden friendliness as a positive development in their relationship and an indication that she had overcome her initial reservations about their partnership. Victoria's questions gradually became more personal, probing Marcus's background and motivations in ways that seemed like genuine interest, but were actually designed to identify psychological pressure points she could exploit. She asked about his mother's reaction to his success, his feelings about entering worlds where he hadn't grown up, his thoughts about the responsibility that came with significant wealth. Marcus answered honestly, sharing his commitment to using his success to create opportunities for others while maintaining connections to his roots. The conversation continued for 20 minutes as Victoria gathered intelligence while appearing to develop genuine interest in Marcus as a person. She learned about his scholarship programs for underprivileged students, his investments in Detroit neighborhood revitalization projects, and his philosophy about using technology to reduce inequality rather than increase it. Each revelation confirmed her suspicion that his values were fundamentally incompatible with her worldview, that his success represented a threat to the natural order she believed should govern society. When James and Alessandro returned from their discussion, both men were excited about potential collaborations that could extend beyond gambling into cultural and educational applications. Alessandro suggested they celebrate with a bottle of the club's signature champagne, a vintage that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a month. The waiter appeared immediately, recognizing the prince's status and the significance of the Rothschild name, presenting the bottle with the ceremony reserved for the establishment's most valued patrons. As glasses were filled and toasts prepared, Victoria felt the weight of the moment. This celebration represented everything she despised about the changing world, the casual way outsiders were welcomed into spaces that should remain exclusive, the celebration of values that threatened traditional hierarchies, the enthusiastic embrace of people who didn't understand the importance of maintaining proper boundaries. She raised her glass as James proposed a toast to innovation, partnership, and the future of entertainment technology. Marcus responded with his own toast, thanking the Rothschild family for their trust and partnership, while expressing hope that their collaboration would create value not just for their companies, but for the broader community of people who loved gaming and entertainment. His words were gracious and appropriate, delivered with sincerity that impressed everyone present. But Victoria heard them as confirmation of everything she found threatening about his presence in their world. The moment when Victoria threw the wine happened so quickly that most witnesses later struggled to remember the exact sequence of events. Marcus had been reaching for his phone to show Alessandro photos of the Detroit facility where his team developed their innovations when Victoria's glass left her hand, its contents arcing through the air before impacting his face and chest with enough force to soak his jacket and splash onto nearby tables. The entire section of the club fell silent as everyone processed what had just occurred. Marcus sat perfectly still for several seconds, red wine dripping from his hair and face, while his expression remained controlled despite the obvious shock. James stared at his sister in horror, recognizing immediately that her action had potentially destroyed months of careful negotiation and relationship building. Alessandro stepped back instinctively, his diplomatic training engaging to avoid being drawn into a conflict between family members and business partners. Victoria remained frozen in her position, her empty hand still extended from the throw, as the reality of her action began to penetrate the alcohol-induced haze that had enabled her decision. She had expected Marcus to react with anger or embarrassment, giving her the satisfaction of seeing him lose composure in front of people whose opinions mattered. Instead, his controlled response and the shocked silence of everyone present made her realize she had miscalculated severely. Marcus slowly reached for a napkin and began wiping wine from his face while maintaining eye contact with Victoria. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet but clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. He thanked her for the drink, commented that he hoped she felt better after expressing herself so directly, and suggested that perhaps they should call it an evening since emotions were clearly running high. His dignified response to her attack made her behavior appear even more unreasonable by contrast. James immediately began apologizing profusely while shooting daggers at his sister with his eyes. He offered to pay for Marcus's clothing, arrange for a replacement suit to be delivered immediately, or provide any other assistance needed to address the situation. His obvious mortification and genuine concern for Marcus's comfort demonstrated where his loyalties lay, making Victoria's isolation even more complete than before her desperate action. Alessandro diplomatically suggested that everyone might benefit from some fresh air, leading the group toward the terrace while giving Marcus space to compose himself. Other patrons began turning away and resuming their conversations. But Victoria could see phones being raised discreetly as people captured photos and videos that would soon circulate through social media channels frequented by European high society. Elena appeared from nowhere, her journalistic instincts having drawn her to the scene of conflict she had anticipated. On the terrace, Marcus excused himself to make a phone call while James continued apologizing and trying to salvage their business relationship. Victoria stood apart from the group, watching Marcus's conversation and noticing the shift in his posture as he spoke. What she didn't know was that Marcus was calling his legal team, instructing them to prepare termination documents for the Rothschild partnership, while simultaneously activating competing negotiations with 3 other casino chains that had been pursuing licensing agreements for months. The phone call lasted 15 minutes, during which James tried desperately to convince Victoria to apologize, while Alessandro maintained diplomatic neutrality, and Elena discreetly gathered quotes from witnesses to the incident. Victoria refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing, insisting that Marcus had needed to be reminded of his place and that her brother was being manipulated by someone who didn't understand their world. Her complete lack of remorse made James realize that repairing the relationship would be impossible regardless of his personal feelings about the situation. When Marcus returned from his call, his demeanor had changed subtly, but unmistakably. The warmth and enthusiasm that had characterized his interactions throughout the evening were replaced by professional courtesy that maintained politeness while establishing emotional distance. He thanked James for the evening and for the opportunity to learn about their operation, speaking as if their partnership was already past tense rather than just beginning. James attempted to minimize the significance of Victoria's behavior, suggesting that family dynamics sometimes created complications that didn't reflect on business relationships or mutual respect between partners. Marcus listened politely, but his responses made clear that he understood exactly what had happened and what it revealed about the Rothschild family's true attitudes toward their partnership. Alessandro remained silent, recognizing the diplomatic impossibility of defending either side without creating problems for his own relationships. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes as Marcus gradually extracted himself from the group while maintaining courtesy toward James and Alessandro. He made no direct reference to Victoria or her actions, treating her as if she were invisible, while making clear through his body language that her behavior had ended any possibility of future collaboration. His controlled dignity throughout the process made her attack appear even more petty and destructive than it had in the moment. Elena positioned herself to overhear as much of the conversation as possible while maintaining the pretense of casual socializing with other club patrons. Her experienced ear caught the subtle indications that a major business deal was dissolving in real time, providing her with the foundation for a story that would dominate European business and society pages for weeks. She made mental notes about body language, facial expressions, and verbal cues that would bring her article to life for readers hungry for details about conflicts among the ultra-wealthy. As Marcus prepared to leave, he shook hands with Alessandro and James while completely ignoring Victoria's presence. His farewell to James was cordial but final, expressing appreciation for the time they had spent together while making clear that their business relationship had ended. James made one last attempt to arrange a follow-up meeting, but Marcus politely declined, indicating that his schedule had become complicated and that his team would be in touch about next steps. The ride back to his hotel gave Marcus time to process the evening's events while his phone buzzed constantly with messages from his legal and business development teams responding to his earlier instructions. By the time he reached his suite, preliminary agreements with rival casino chains were already being drafted, while termination documents for the Rothschild deal were being finalized. The $2.4 billion partnership that Victoria had destroyed with her wine glass would be replaced by even more lucrative arrangements with competitors who appreciated both his technology and his dignity. Victoria returned to her penthouse apartment alone, as James had refused to speak to her during their silent ride home, and Alessandro had diplomatically disappeared after expressing his fatigue. She found herself surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt empty, realizing that her action had cost not only a crucial business deal, but potentially her relationship with her brother and her standing in the social circles she valued. Elena's article would appear in the morning, ensuring that her behavior would be discussed throughout European society pages for weeks to come. The immediate aftermath of the incident spread through European high society networks with the speed and thoroughness that only truly shocking behavior could achieve. Elena's article appeared online within hours, complete with eyewitness quotes and analysis of the business implications of Victoria's attack on Marcus. Social media amplified the story as people who had witnessed the scene shared their perspectives, while others debated the deeper meanings of the conflict between old money attitudes and new world success. James spent the night alternating between furious conversations with his sister and desperate attempts to contact Marcus's representatives. His calls went unanswered as Marcus's team implemented their predetermined strategy for ending the partnership, while initiating new negotiations with competitors. The Rothschild legal team worked through the night, trying to identify ways to minimize the financial and reputational damage from the dissolved partnership, but their options were limited by the completely reasonable grounds Marcus had for termination. Financial markets reacted immediately to news of the collapse deal, with Rothschild casino stocks dropping 12% in overnight trading, while Reality Sync shares rose 8% on speculation about alternative partnerships with larger, more stable casino operators. Industry analysts praised Marcus for maintaining his dignity while expressing concern about the Rothschild family's ability to navigate modern business relationships if Victoria's attitude was representative of their organizational culture. Marcus spent the remainder of his Monaco trip in meetings with representatives from competing casino chains who had flown in overnight after learning about the Rothschild deal's collapse. His technology suddenly became more valuable rather than less, as companies recognized that partnering with him offered not only innovative capabilities, but association with someone who had demonstrated grace under pressure and commitment to his principles, despite significant financial temptation. The competing offers that materialized within 24 hours of Victoria's attack exceeded the original Rothschild deal by nearly $800 million. As casino operators sought to differentiate themselves by embracing rather than merely tolerating Marcus's background and values. Several companies specifically highlighted their commitment to diversity and innovation in their partnership proposals, positioning themselves as more aligned with Marcus's vision for democratizing luxury gaming experiences. Victoria's personal consequences extended far beyond the immediate financial impact on her family's business. Alessandro never returned her calls, while other potential romantic interests disappeared as word spread about her behavior and its implications for anyone associated with her. Social invitations dried up as hostesses sought to avoid the drama that her presence might create, leaving her increasingly isolated within the very social circles she had been so desperate to protect. The most devastating blow to Victoria's worldview came when she learned that Marcus had established a scholarship program specifically for children from working-class backgrounds to attend the same Swiss finishing school where she had been educated. The irony of using his success to provide others with access to the exclusive educational experiences she considered her birthright forced her to confront the possibility that her assumptions about natural social hierarchies were not only wrong, but actively harmful. Elena's follow-up articles tracked the continuing fallout from the incident, documenting how Victoria's behavior had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of entitlement and prejudice in an increasingly interconnected global economy. Business schools began using the case study to illustrate how personal biases could destroy corporate partnerships. While etiquette experts cited the incident as an example of how traditional social rules needed updating for modern multicultural environments, James's relationship with his sister never fully recovered from the incident, as he struggled to reconcile his love for her with his disgust at her behavior and its consequences for their family business. He eventually took control of company operations, while Victoria was quietly encouraged to focus on charitable work that would rehabilitate her public image. Their father's disappointment in his daughter's conduct was so profound that he revised his estate plans to ensure James would have complete authority over business decisions, regardless of Victoria's inheritance. The Rothschild casino chain ultimately survived the loss of the Reality Sync partnership by pursuing less innovative but more reliable technology solutions that maintained their traditional market position without achieving the revolutionary growth potential they had originally sought. Their stock price recovered gradually as investors accepted the more conservative strategy. But industry observers noted that the company had missed a crucial opportunity to lead technological innovation in their sector. Marcus's alternative partnerships proved even more successful than the original Rothschild deal would have been, as his new casino partners embraced his vision for democratizing luxury gaming rather than simply tolerating it as a necessary compromise. The virtual reality lounges he envisioned began appearing in middle-class neighborhoods across America and Europe, allowing ordinary families to experience sophisticated gaming environments while maintaining the psychological satisfaction that made luxury gambling appealing. The technology implementation exceeded all expectations for both user engagement and financial performance, validating Marcus's belief that expanding access to premium experiences could increase rather than decrease their value. Players who experienced luxury gaming through virtual reality often saved money to visit physical luxury casinos, creating a pipeline of new customers rather than cannibalizing existing revenue streams as traditional casino operators had feared. Victoria's attempt to protect exclusivity by humiliating Marcus had produced exactly the opposite result, accelerating the democratization of experiences she had considered permanently reserved for people like herself. The irony of her actions was not lost on industry observers, who noted that her prejudice had eliminated her family's opportunity to profit from and potentially control the very changes she had sought to prevent. Years later, Marcus's mother finally visited one of the luxury casinos that had partnered with her son's company, experiencing the elegance and sophistication of Monte Carlo-style gaming in a venue located 30 minutes from her Detroit home. The moment represented everything Victoria had tried to prevent: The breaking down of barriers between worlds she believed should remain separate, but it also demonstrated the positive potential of technology to create rather than destroy value for everyone involved. The woman who had cleaned offices at night to support her son's education found herself treated with the same respect and attention that European royalty received at the original Monte Carlo, experiencing luxury that enhanced rather than threatened the exclusivity others enjoyed. The expansion of access had not diminished the appeal of premium experiences, but had instead created new appreciation for the artistry and psychology that made them special, proving that scarcity was often artificial rather than necessary. Victoria eventually learned about Marcus's mother's casino visit through social media coverage that celebrated the democratization of luxury experiences, forcing her to confront the reality that her worldview had been not only wrong, but ultimately self-destructive. The woman she had dismissed as unworthy of accessing their world was treated with more genuine respect and warmth than Victoria herself had received in years, highlighting how her own behavior had made her the true outsider in a society that valued character over circumstances of birth. The casino industry's transformation continued as other technology companies followed Marcus's lead in creating immersive experiences that bridged physical and digital environments. The innovations that began with his partnership deals fundamentally changed how people thought about luxury and access, proving that exclusivity based on artificial scarcity was less valuable than excellence available to anyone willing to appreciate it. Marcus never spoke publicly about the wine-throwing incident, maintaining his characteristic dignity while focusing on building partnerships with people and organizations that shared his values about technology's potential to improve lives rather than reinforce existing inequalities. His success became a testament to the power of responding to prejudice with grace rather than anger, demonstrating that the best revenge against small-minded thinking was living well and creating value for others. The $240 million that Victoria had destroyed with her champagne glass became the seed money for innovations that generated billions in value while providing millions of people with access to experiences previously reserved for the wealthy. Her moment of spite had inadvertently accelerated exactly the kind of social change she had sought to prevent, proving that attempting to maintain artificial barriers between people ultimately strengthened the forces working to eliminate them. In the end, Victoria's wine glass had revealed more about her character than any amount of wealth or social position ever could. While Marcus's response had demonstrated the kind of dignity that money could never buy, but that commanded respect in any environment. The incident became a defining moment that shaped both their futures, though neither could have predicted how completely it would reverse their positions in the very social hierarchy Victoria had been so desperate to preserve.